Hey, welcome everybody to our Tuesday Live. We have a terrific program for you all today. Know you're going to be blessed. Right now, let's get going as we have our guest in studio with me today, Bill Salus. Bill, welcome. This is great.
Tom, it's great to be the first guest in your new studio. I love it. Thank you so much. What an honor.
You are the first one. This is totally cool. And, we're wanting to do as much as we can, move forward with the hope that we have in the Lord Jesus Christ. He came the first time, he's coming again. And it's like, hey, whatever we can do. And I always have appreciated you. You've been a friend and a brother to me for years, and such an encouragement. And I remember when we first met, you had your new book out, Israelistine. And I remember it, and our Israelstine. And remember that book, and then from there, everything has just been moving forward, and you've been a blessing. And it's great having you here, the first in-studio guest that I have.
What an honor. Thank you.
This is cool. So we have a lot to talk about. Hey, listen, before we get going, one more quick reminder, if you would. You can like and share this. Even on the app, you can share it. It gives you an opportunity to be able to do that. And so check it out. On YouTube or other places, you can like and share. It really helps us to be able to get the word out. So, Bill, we are going to be talking about what you need to know. And I'm going to touch on a couple of news items first. And the first thing that we have here, check this out. This is the UN's new fact-checking system called iVerify will be used to crack down on misinformation all over the world. That's an article from Michael Snyder. I look at that, and we can see the direction that everything is going. So that's out there. And then we have things like this. Here's this, the International Monetary Fund Managing Director says, we are working hard on a global CBDC. Working hard, got to get that global digital currency. Man, I mean, everything is just shouting mark of the beast. It's hard to even deny what's really going on. It's like you have to have your head in the sand to not pay attention and say something fishy's going on with this.
That's right.
I have more. You want to talk?
Well, I was going to say along those lines, the World Health Organization recently met, and they have adopted a global digital passport, taking the model out of the EU digital passport. So again, it's all moving in that direction of the tribulation and of the Antichrist and the mark of the beast, etc.
It is. Well, also along those lines, I know we're going to get to some other things here in just a minute. This wasn't actually what we were planning to talk about, but thinking of the global passports, these digital passports, iVerify and everything, I've had to travel a lot. I was just recently in Israel. In international travel, I have global entry. And the ease of it, traveling with global entry, is fantastic when you're coming back in the country. You just walk past the machines. In fact, now when you go into Israel, just walk past them, you look at it, and you're in. We're used to have these really long lines. If you don't have global entry coming back into America, you still do. So some of these things that are going to be pushed upon us are going to really seem like answers to what's coming. But ultimately, they're a trap, and it's a setup for the system of the beast. And a lot of them are going to go, yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. We're not yet at the mark of the beast, but man, everything is certainly going that direction. Here's this other article. Why Arabs do not trust the Biden administration. Man, we see this. We know it's Saudi Arabia doesn't. Seems like the entire Islamic community doesn't, not just the Arabs. Obviously, Iran, Turkey, you start looking. Israel, what's Israel going to do? And then there's this coming out of Zero Hedge. And I'm really curious as to your thoughts on this, because we have the China and Taiwan issue. And here's this. China seeks military base in Cuba. In Cuba. It's in response to U.S.-Taiwan issues. Now, again, we're going somewhere else here in a few more minutes to talk about what people really need to know. But I want to talk about some of this news first before we get to the topic.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, an article just came out today. Blinken is over in China, and he basically is not acknowledging the sovereignty of Taiwan. We don't. There's actually only 13 states that do acknowledge Taiwan. It broke away from China in 1949. Acknowledged it as an independent country. The list includes Guatemala, Haiti, the Holy See, Eswatani, Tuvala. I mean, we could read all these 13, but the point is, basically, some of them you've never even heard of. But generally speaking, it's all the countries, and Taiwan is not part of the United Nations. A lot of us have wondered when China is actually going to attack Taiwan, because they keep threatening to do that. I thought when Russia invaded Ukraine, we thought, okay, well, that's going to set precedent for China taking Taiwan. So we'll have to see where that goes. But this is a livid scenario to watch, to the Taiwan-China scenario.
Yeah, watching that, and China and Cuba, you start thinking, I mean, you're looking, and really the U.S. administration is so weak, I believe, intentionally weak. To me, it appears Biden is the perfect puppet for these globalists to be able to bring in the plan they want. I mean, you couldn't handpick anybody better than Biden, because he basically doesn't know anything he's doing. He's blackmailed pretty much everywhere with all the different deals. But man, you look and go, he is placed there. And it's also evident to me that God is moving up the end time timeline. I mean, we can see it just coming so fast.
Yeah, I think he would be in the position to accelerate the end time signs, that particular president we have, Biden. The other thing you touched about was the different relationships with the Arabs with America. You're seeing all these different alignments going on right now with Saudi Arabia, and going February of this year to China to broker a deal and restore relationships with Iran. Syria is now trying to get back into the Arab League, and they're going to be host meetings with Turkey, Russia, and Iran, trying to figure out how to resettle the Syrian country, because those three countries have interests in Syria. Ever since the civil wars ended, they've been meeting several times. So we're seeing all these different shifts going on right now. And Israel's getting concerned about Biden. Biden has not invited Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House as of yet. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Netanyahu just gave authority of all the West Bank to Smotrich as the minister. And he says we're going to put 4,500 new homes in the settlements there. Immediately the Biden administration comes out and they're very concerned about that. You can't do that. It's going to make it very improbable and hard for the two-state solution, which is one of the deals with Saudi Arabia. They want to normalize relationships with Israel, so Israel wants that, and Biden wants to try to do that for his legacy. But Saudi Arabia says, first thing on the bat is we got to have a Palestinian state before the 1967 borders. These are no-goes, and Israel's concerned about that as well.
Man, we see, I mean, everything is just shaping up. It's just really remarkable to watch when you look at the Bible and you see all of the different positions, the pieces of the puzzle. You wonder how much longer. Man, things are happening quick. But I'm going to move on to the next subject here. But first of all, I want to mention your shirt. People are wondering, hey, what about Bill's shirt? We're going to get to why Bill is wearing his Millennium shirt here in just a minute. We really want to get to what you need to know. And Bill, I want to ask you about something else here in just a second, but real quick, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to our website, which is prophecydepot.com, prophecydepot, like homedepot.com. We got my shows, my articles, our products are there, books and DVDs, so prophecydepot.com.
Great. And feel free to look at that camera over there whenever you're talking.
There's so many cameras in here, I wasn't sure which one to look at.
Yeah, it's all these new toys that we got. And God's good. And so with that, now also, again, we're going to get to this other subject in a minute, but real quick, you have a new book that's coming out in August, I believe. And, we were talking just a little while ago, you have more evidence for Psalm 83 is actually going to be fulfilled. Damascus, the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 17, a little bit on these things.
Yeah, the book and DVD that goes with it is called The Future War Prophecies. We're going to talk about all the wars that are unfulfilled, yet future in the Bible, the wars with Israeli Defense Forces, the wars into the tribulation, the demonic invasions of the trumpet, the fifth and sixth trumpet, the Gog and Magog war at the end of the millennium, the Armageddon campaign, etc. But one of the things that you're going to be very interested in, because I know there's a kind of a debate about, well, did Damascus already get destroyed? Mm-hmm. Andy Woods and Mark Hitchcock would say, yeah, by the Assyrians in 732 BC. But we've got incredible research we put forward showing that there's historical research showing that did not happen. That'll be in the book. What about the prophecy of Elam? Iran, Jeremiah chapter 49. Did Nebuchadnezzar fulfill that? Around 586 BC, we got historical evidence saying, no, that did not happen. What about Psalm 83? Is it more than a prayer, or was it fulfilled in 1948? We got evidence showing that did not happen as well, that it's still an unfulfilled prophecy. So the book's covering a lot of important angles and rebutting a lot of controversies and things on those prophecies.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably half the guests I have on here support you and your view, and the other half have issues, but they've all been kind and generous, you know.
Oh yeah, we try to be.
Dr. Annie Woods was just on here last week. We were talking a little bit about it. I find it fascinating with Psalm 83, what you have the nations or the people groups immediately surrounding Israel are not involved in the Ezekiel 38 war.
Right.
And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. When you start looking at Israel's neighbors, wouldn't they all be included, especially since Iran is included in Ezekiel 38? They already have the proxies of Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, you have the Houthis, you have all of these, so why wouldn't they? And right. It really causes, should give cause to pause and think, maybe the Psalm 83 really is there, but I know in the book you have a lot more evidence that supports both of those, Isaiah 17 and Psalm 83 and other things that you have.
Jeremiah 49. Also in the book we'll show why Ezekiel 38 and Psalm 83 are two distinctly different prophecies as well. Some people think they could be the same, but they're distinctly different. Different enemies, different motives, different defeats, different goals, etc.
Yeah. So I'm looking very forward to your book coming out and having you back out in person, since we can do this now too. Okay, so let's go here. Your shirt. You look like you're on vacation. You're making me want to be on vacation. So, but with that, let's talk about what is coming, because in the prophecy world, we can get really hung up on so many different things. Ezekiel chapter 38, wars and rumors of wars, pestilence. I know what I do. I talk about these things all the time. I get that. And sometimes these thoughts can be overwhelming, but really, rightly understood, we have more hope than anybody that's out there. We understand Jesus came the first time. We know that he's coming again. We know that we're getting called home, but sometimes we still miss the hope in there. And I mean, I read a lot of people that will say, "Oh, I just want to get out of here," and I get that thought. You know, we can see the world closing in. We see the woke madness and everything. But let's go. Let's take this to these reminders. What it is that we need to know, some areas that we really don't spend much time thinking about, but the Bible's very clear on some of these things.
Right, and so I've written a book called The Millennium, Prophecies and the New Jerusalem. It also comes with a DVD. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the millennium and the eternal order and that sort of thing. The reason I wore this shirt is because Jesus Christ is going to restore the earth after the tribulation period, after the judgments that pretty much devastate the world at that time. And he's going to restore it to Garden of Eden-like conditions. I imagine there'll be some tropical paradises, and I'll be probably wearing a shirt like this at that particular time. The other reason I wore this shirt, candidly, is after this show, we're going to do my testimony, and part of my testimony, I lived in Hawaii, so I figured it'd be fitting as well. Double purposes.
That'd be great. So with that, you don't live too far from here. You live in the desert. It's hot where I live in the summer. It's even hotter where you live in the summer. And one of the prophecies is the desert will bloom. Now we know immediately that's the immediate territory, speaking of Israel and the Middle East. But when you start looking at the globe is going to be reset. We're not going to have the new heaven and the new earth yet, but the world will be transformed. But I have something here that I think needs some clarity on it. And it's from Daniel chapter 12. And in Daniel chapter 12, the angel is talking to Daniel and says, hey, when it comes to the time of the end, the wicked will see it, but they will not understand. The wise will see it, they will understand. I've taken that to mean everybody's going to know something's wrong. Those who have rejected Christ won't go along with this. They're not going to go along with this. But the wise, those who are seeking the Bible and seeking to understand the second coming of Christ, they're going to get it. They're going to look at the prophecies in the Bible. They're going to connect. Right after that, though, the angel says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away.
Pause. We can put a slide up right now.
Oh,
can we
please
get slide 4? If you guys in the tech room because Tom's going to read a very important passage to you right now, and that's Daniel chapter 12.
Okay. Slide number 4. Okay, so check this out. So with that, it says here, Daniel chapter 12, verse 11, from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation set up. Bill, I take that as being when Antichrist sits in the temple, demands that he is worshipped as God. There shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. And a lot of confusion on that. Dr. Woods and I, we talked a little bit about it last week. You have some slides. Walk us through this. Why is there this weird time gap in here when we think Jesus is coming back and the Millennial Kingdom is going to begin? He's going to come to Megiddo. He's going to split the Mount of Olives in two. But wait a minute. All of a sudden, we have this time period in here where something's different.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is the tribulation period is 7 years, and it's split up in 2 compartments, the first half and the second half. So from the abomination of desolation, which is sort of the mid part of the tribulation, you would have 1,260 days left, 3.5 years, to the second half of the tribulation. But what Daniel's saying is, hold on. Yeah, actually, the abomination of desolation, which some people think is actually the image of the beast, is going to be staying in the temple another 30 days beyond the second coming. Jesus Christ comes right around the 1,260-day period. So 30 days longer. So that's interesting.
So it gets from 1,260 to 1,290, which is where Daniel brings in at 1,290.
There's 30 days there.
Yeah.
But then he goes on and says, blessed are those who can make it all the way to the 1,335 days, which adds on another 45 days. So you have what's called a 75-day interval period. And Tom, what's going to happen there is that when Jesus comes back in the second coming, he doesn't immediately just start the 1,000-year kingdom. He's got a problem that the planet has been destroyed from the judgments. I write this in the Millennium Prophecies book, the 7 seal, 7 trumpet. As a matter of fact, this is slide 8. If you can get it up, I'll wait for one moment so they can read it.
I'm going to pull it up for me also, slide number 8.
The world has been destroyed. The 7 seal, 7 trumpet, and 7 bowl judgments in the book of Revelation devastate the planet. Rivers, streams, and oceans are turned into blood in Revelation 8 and 16. Scorching heat and global wildfires have destroyed much of the world's vegetation as per those same chapters. Topping it off, a great earthquake shakes the earth, and 100-pound hailstones pummel the planet in Revelation 16. These 2 events cause every island to disappear and mountains to no longer be found. So basically we're told that the earth is going to be destroyed. Isaiah tells us in Isaiah 51, lift up your eyes to heavens and look to the earth beneath, for the heavens will vanish away like smoke. The earth will grow old like a garment. So his imagery is the earth will grow old and smoke will burn and it'll fade away like an old garment. But Peter gives more details in 2 Peter 3. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and elements melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. So the bottom line is, through the tribulation judgments and things, the world is going to be destroyed, as we just saw. But Christ is going to restore the earth. We've got quotes on that we can give you in a minute. So he's got to mop up the mess, but he's got to do a lot of other things too. He's still got people running around with the mark of the beast. So we'll look in the highlights of the millennium in a minute, but the 75-day interval period has got a lot of things he's going to do, a ton of things. And in a moment, if we go there, we can show a slide on that too. Okay,
well, you just bring up something really interesting. You bring up people, and I don't think many people have thought through this. Jesus comes back, he casts the false prophet Antichrist into the lake of fire, and he stands on the Mount of Olives, splits the Mount of Olives in 2, but I mean, when you think about it, there's still people running around on the planet that have the mark of the beast. They survived the judgments, but they're still here. Literally, you're right. They'll be running around on the planet. I mean, when you start thinking this through, and you think, okay, so that's part of the process too, not just the cleanup. We're going to have our new bodies. Are we going to be part of the cleanup?
Well, if we're in the church, this is the good news, church. You're going to be raptured, because that's about to happen real soon, we're believing. And we're going to be in our immortal bodies at that time. We shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye. So we're going to actually come back and co-reign with Jesus Christ. He's making us kings and priests. And that process is going to continue on. We see us as the church, Revelation chapter 4 and 5, pictured as the 24 elders in part, casting our crowns back at his feet, being made kings and priests, so we can have functions in the Messianic kingdom to co-reign with him. I get quotes on all this in the book and DVD. But so yeah, we're going to be involved in the process. But the thing that's interesting is that it said, wait, blessed is he who goes to the 1,335 days. Because one of the things that happens in the 75-day interval, where I believe right at the tail end, is in Matthew 25, we're told about the sheep and goat Gentile judgment. The sheep are the good ones. They're sit on the right side of Christ, and he applauds them, and he tells them good things.
Okay, real quick. So those sheep are the ones who came to Christ during the tribulation period.
Right.
Okay.
They got saved. They survived the tribulation period. Many believers who get saved after the rapture during the tribulation will not survive. But they're going to be resurrected along with the Old Testament saints. The tribulation saints will be resurrected. That's part of the 75-day interval. But the sheep are the ones that survived, and there'll be remnants coming out of Iran, we're told in Jeremiah chapter 49, 39. Jordan, Jeremiah 49. Egypt will have a remnant. Assyria. Of course, Israel will have a faithful remnant. And other countries will actually have remnants too.
Let me ask you here, I don't want to sidetrack you, but you have these people coming to Christ. In Isaiah chapter 19, I believe it's talking about Egypt, and where it's because of their oppressors, they're turned to the Lord. It's very clear which Lord they're talking about. The Lord of heaven, the King of kings, the Lord of Israel. And then there's a road that goes, there's a highway that goes from Egypt to Assyria, is what I believe Isaiah chapter 19 also says. So I find this just really fascinating. So you have the sheep. These are the sheep, the believers, but not just from those countries that you mentioned over in the Arab communities and Iran, but also throughout the whole world, those who came to Christ, who did not die during the tribulation period. They survived. They're the sheep. And this is the sheep and goat judgment of Matthew chapter 25.
Right.
Okay, so with the goats, those are those who are running around on the planet. Jesus comes back. They're over in Canada. They're in America. They're in Russia. They're wherever they are, but they have the mark of the beast.
That's right.
Jesus returns. We have the 75-day interval.
Yeah, so the blessed who go to the 1,335 days, they're blessed because they survived the sheep and goat judgment Gentile. They were saved sheep. They will go in and populate the kingdom. Now, they do carry their sin natures in there with them, if you can believe that, but they're actually believers. They're saved the same way we're saved through faith in Jesus Christ. But they will have offspring over the 1,000-year period, and there's this age of accountability. We can get into that in a moment. But they're the ones that make it to the 1,335 days. The goat judgment is a slaughter. It's really bad. If you're not saved, that's where you're going to go. If you get left behind, you're probably going to end up taking the mark of the beast. Of course, a lot of people can get saved. We just talked about. I don't want to get into a rabbit trail on that, but the point is, that's the thing. And with respects to when Jesus comes at the Armageddon campaign, he's killing the Antichrist gets cast into the lake of fire with the false prophet. But there's a lot of, I call them Armageddonites, the armies of the Antichrist, who get killed. But those are the armies. There's a civilian still running around with the mark of the beast. Those are the goats. They've got to be judged. They cannot populate the kingdom. They can't, after the 1,335-day deadline, they can't go into the kingdom and coexist with the sheep. So they will be slaughtered, and that's part of Matthew 25 judgment. Okay,
so the sheep and goat judgment is going to take up much of that time during that 75-year period.
75-day period. Well,
75-day period, thank you. So with that, thinking, are we part of the cleanup because the tribulation period was such a mess? Are we helping to clean up the planet, or do you have any idea how that works? I mean, obviously, you have the topography is changed, so we have miraculous things that take place when Jesus comes back too. But the planet is going to be a serious mess from all the judgments. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's going to be a mess. I've not found anything that says we're actually part of the cleanup. We're part of the co-reigning.
Kings and priests.
Kings and priests co-reigning.
How about the roundup of the goats?
That seems to be involving the angels in Matthew 24. So the angels, first Christ comes, it's interesting, he comes in Isaiah 63 single-handedly, alone, the year of his redeemed. He's got blood on his garments coming out of Bozrah, Edom. And apparently he goes back and gets his angels in Revelation chapter 19, I think it is. And he comes back down and he does the Armageddon, continues on with the battle. But the angels are coming back with him, and they have a dual role. They're going to help gather these goat Gentiles and bring them, a lot of them to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It's how are they going to do that, right? Are they still going to be planes? I mean, I get into those kind of questions in the book. But so they're going to have a role to help gather those, and part of the winepress of judging them as well. In
Revelation, I think it's 15, I think it's chapter 15, isn't it?
I think it's 14.
Is it 14? The wine press?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's chapter 14. Okay, so now as we continue on it, I want to ask you this because you mentioned Basra and the blood on the Lord's garments. So give us the scenario. Jesus is coming, Revelation chapter 19. He's on a white horse. We who have been caught up, we're coming back with him. How's it go? Where does he go first, second, third? How's that work?
Well, I believe this is all going to be part of my new book, The Future War Prophecies, that we talked about earlier. I believe when he comes back, he goes and gets the faithful Jewish remnant. I think I chart the course where he probably brings them back through the Basra area, because Basra and Edom, southern Jordan area, is going to be a desolate wilderness throughout the millennium. They're going to come through. It talks about them being a mighty noise, a multitude, this faithful remnant coming back. And he's going to take them to Jerusalem. He's probably going to go to Jerusalem first and fight the war there and then go get them. Bring them to Jerusalem. The Mount of Olives will have been split, which I think personally happens before he touches down on it. Because he says he comes to the Mount of Olives and it says, and it's split. It doesn't say it's split right then. Because if it's, how do you split the Mount of Olives into the two valleys? I mean, that's like a 10.0 earthquake. Is Jesus standing there, juggling on the Mount of Olives? Remember, there's 3 earthquakes that happened before this time. One is in Ezekiel 38. One is there's the big earthquake in Israel. There's the big earthquake with the 2 witnesses, when 7,000 people die. There's a big earthquake in the 7th bowl judgment also. And of course, the second coming is when Jesus comes back and goes to the Mount of Olives. He says, it's interesting because I'm getting ahead of myself here, and this is in Zechariah chapter 14. He stands on the Mount of Olives. But he also talks about a remnant of the city of Jerusalem that flees through these valleys, flee through the valleys that are going to be created. So you have to wait for my new book to see how I explain the whole march. I got 2 chapters devoted to this stuff, and it's kind of fresh in my mind, but I need my notes in front of me to.
No, that's great. So just real quick then, just summarize what you just said. 3 quick points. Coming out of the sky, Jesus on his white horse goes where, real quick. You just gave us all the details.
Okay, ultimately, when he comes with us,
first place, yeah.
He's still got to fight off some people in Jerusalem area.
Okay.
So if I took a guess, he probably has to go there, but he's ultimately got to go get the faithful remnant.
He has to get the faithful remnant. He's got to go to Mount of Olives.
And he gives them to the Mount of Olives.
And it appears Megiddo now, where he casts the false prophet in a lake of, and Antichrist into the lake of fire. Now, many people say he never actually touches ground in Jezreel Valley or Megiddo. He's basically a flyover, a sword out of his mouth. It's his word. He's done with that battle. So that's kind of on his way. How do you see that? Something like that?
Well,
making his way to...
I'm not exactly sure that the Antichrist actually goes to Megiddo. Megiddo, the Jezreel Valley, is a staging ground. Arnold Fruchterman would go on to say in his Footsteps of the Messiah, there's actually no fighting even going on in Jezreel Valley. We're told in Daniel chapter 11, at the end around verse 41 or something like that, that the Antichrist has gone down into Egypt, and I believe that's when Egypt gets desolated for 40 years in Ezekiel 29, and the Egyptians get dispersed for 40 years. But then it says he gets troubling news from to the north and to the east of his direction, which would be in southern Jordan, from where he's at, and that's where the remnant is being hiding in Petra. So it says he then goes back into the glorious land, another word for the promised land at that time, which I believe will be much larger in size than it is presently today. I think it will incorporate Jordan as well. But he goes back to the glorious land. He sets up the palaces of his tents in his military headquarters between the sea and this great valley, in the valley by the sea. And I believe that's the Dead Sea, and I believe that's probably the Kidron Valley area, the Valley of Decision, Valley of Jehoshaphat, probably the Kidron Valley.
Kidron Valley. A lot of commentators will put it at Kidron.
And remember when he went in Zechariah chapter 14, verses 1 and 2, he goes into Jerusalem and he sacks the place. The women are ravished, the houses are plundered. That's part of why Jesus said, and when you see the abomination of desolation, at the midpoint of the trip, flee immediately, because he knows in Zechariah 13:8 that 2/3 of the Jews living in the land will be killed, will be cut off. So he tells them to flee immediately. So the Antichrist goes there, abominates the temple, starts killing the Jewish people, then ultimately goes at some point down to Egypt. I believe that happens in the second half, my understanding. Mm-hmm. Remember that when he goes back to set up his palaces of his tents, his military headquarters between the sea and in this glorious valley and glorious land, his headquarters in wherever we think commercial Babylon is going to be, I think it's Rome. Some people think it's rebuilt Babylon Iraq, etc. Some think it's New York. They're going to be destroyed as a result, I believe, of the fifth bowl judgment when the throne of the Antichrist is struck, the beast, everything goes dark. I think his whole cashless economy shuts down, temporarily at least. And so I don't believe he's got a place to go back to, his commercial headquarters at that point. I believe that goes into Revelation 18, where the great city is destroyed in 1 hour. Mm-hmm. I see it as a different destruction than Revelation 17, 16. Mm-hmm. Where the 10 kings desolate the harlot. They hate the harlot, they desolate her. I believe that's ecclesiastical Babylon. Mm-hmm. I believe commercial Babylon is Revelation 18, destroyed in 1 hour, different scenarios.
I put them different, almost identical to that too. Okay. And I think there's some clear reasons why. I mean, we can go into a lot of different reasons why. I know some of our friends and colleagues disagree with us. They connect them together. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why I like doing this, so people can hear the differences of opinion. Mm-hmm. Revelation chapter 17, the 10 kings destroy the harlot. Mm-hmm. They destroy that Babylon. Revelation 18, God destroys the kings of the earth. So it's like, there's a few different reasons why I would separate them. But where do you place, I know this isn't part of what we were going to talk about. We're actually going to talk about the joyful things. I don't know if we're going to get to.
Let's get into the highlights of the Millennium.
Where do you put Revelation chapter 18, the destruction of commercial Babylon, industrial Babylon?
I put Revelation 17 starts after the rapture in the gap. Post-rapture, pre-tribulation gap, carries on into the first half of the trib. That's ecclesiastical Babylon. Ends at the mid part of the tribulation when the 10 kings desolate the harlot. They confiscate her wealth. Mm-hmm. I believe that's spearheaded by the Vatican. That's my personal teaching. And then the commercial Babylon, when the mark of the beast starts to happen in the mid part of the tribulation, Revelation chapter 13. I believe you get to shift your attention to the details in Revelation 18 as well. And when the fifth bowl judgment happens and the beast's kingdom is struck, and it goes dark, you see the merchants of the earth are weeping because no one's buying or selling their goods anymore. Not that they don't have goods, but the commercial system's been shut down temporarily. I think it's temporarily.
You think it's temporary? So that's the fifth bowl. You're getting pretty close to Armageddon at that point.
Well, Armageddon's the sixth bowl.
The sixth. So if you get the fifth bowl, Revelation 18, the sixth bowl, so they can't be too far apart, I would think.
Well, Revelation 18 is, that's... I believe the fifth bowl actually does hit the commercial headquarters.
Yeah, I totally can see that.
And then Satan calls on 3 demonic frogs, they call them frog spirits.
Yeah. In the sixth bowl.
To signs and deceive the kings of the earth, suggesting to them that they can actually go wage war with God. So they start coming to the Armageddon campaign. Yeah. And then the sixth bowl says the Euphrates dries up so the kings of the east can cross over. I believe a lot of us would teach those are from the Orient, Asian kings, China, etc.
I think there's more to it than that. But in fact, watching the trailer for your new book, I totally connected with who the 200 million army is.
Oh, I don't believe that's China.
Yeah, I don't either. That's why I appreciated what you had what you have coming in your book. Mm-hmm. I agree. In fact, I've done this many times. I've talked about Revelation 16, Revelation 9, the 200 million man army. Man, half the people get so mad at me when I say, hey, look, there's no evidence at all it's China. I mean, China could be involved in the kings of the East. It's plural. They could be a player in there, but not with Revelation 9, chapter 9 in the 200 million army. For various reasons. But, Bill, we didn't talk about one thing we had planned to talk about. This is proof that we never scripted.
Can we talk about the highlights of Millennium?
Yes, but I got a question real quick. This person asks, will Bill and John Haller ever write a book together on the rapture? Now, John's on this program a lot. You're friends with John. John is just one of my favorite people. And he's pre-wrath. We're pre-trib. Pretty much all the guests I have are pre-trib except for John. And so there you go. I think that would be great. You two should write a book together. You get along well, too.
Yeah, I like John a lot. We do disagree on the timing of the rapture, but on a lot of things we do agree.
Yes.
But I'm probably not going to co-author a book
You think you should?
On that topic with John.
I think you should. I think it'd be great. You can point out your differences. I think it'd be fantastic. Okay, so with that, again, we really got to get to the happy stuff. Why you're wearing that shirt here in a minute. So again, can people find you?
ProphecyDepot.com. That's my website, ProphecyDepot.com. We also have a daily newsstand where we put the relevant news, we think it's biblically relevant, at Prophecy Headlines, ProphecyHeadlines.com.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Now, okay, everything's been ugly. We get through we get through all the additional days from Daniel chapter 12. The Millennial Kingdom begins. Give us a picture. This is great. Jesus is ruling in Jerusalem, right?
Yep.
And we get to see him. We're actually going to be able to go see Jesus in Jerusalem. To me, that is just off the charts.
Well, what's interesting, it says here in 2 Timothy 2, well, Revelation 1:6 says, "To him who loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood, and has made us kings and priests to his God and Father, to him be glory and dominion forever and ever." But then we go on, another supporting text of our role in the millennium is in 2 Timothy 2:11 and 12. It says, "This is a faithful saying, for if we died with him, we shall also live with him. If we endure, we shall also reign with him." So see, that's part of our blessing and benefit of being a believer in the church age, because that's relevant to the church saints. Now, do we want to talk about the millenniums of the highlights of the millennium? Just a couple
Yeah,
slides?
let's go through the highlights, and then I got to get some questions too. So with that, it's going to be great though. I'm going to throw something out there. Will there be animals in the Millennial Kingdom?
Oh, yeah,
and then go to your highlights.
Okay, yeah, there will. We're told in Revelation chapter 11 that I don't have it pulled up on my computer, but the wolf will lay with the lamb.
Isaiah,
Fact,
right?
Yeah, matter of fact, let me
Yeah.
I got a slide on that that's really interesting. Just one second, I'll try to get to it pretty quick here. Okay, here we go. What's interesting, we're told in Isaiah 11:6-8, "The wolf shall also dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and now get this, the little child shall lead them." So a child is going to lead these wild animals who are actually now, they're not predators of each other, right? "And a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear will graze, their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox." But get this, "The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole." So a child that's nursing a baby, nursing from his mother, is going to be laid down by the cobra's hole. Not advisable right now. Then it goes on and says, "And the weaned child," now no longer nursing child, "will put his hand in the viper's den." So part of the training of the child who will lead these animals is you can set them by the cobra's hole, put the hand in the viper's den,
yeah.
Now lead these animals. It's an entirely different, restored world at that point.
It's totally different. I mean, when I look at it and I think, man, I think you have this Garden of Eden-like transformation, definitely in the Mideast, when it talks about the Garden of Eden being transformed.
Especially Israel, yeah.
Especially Israel and the surrounding areas too. You can tell. Where do you think you'll live in the Millennial Kingdom? How do you think that works out? Because
Well, maybe Hawaii.
yeah, and you know what, Hawaii, you know, the desert could be every bit as nice as Hawaii by then too. I mean, because things are going to be transformed. There's this great big mountain that's right out there, separates where you live and where I live. A huge mountain. So we either got to go over it or around it. But when you look at the tribulation period, the mountains are going to crumble.
Oh, yeah.
So you wonder what's going to happen to that one. I mean, things are going to change. Again, the desert's going to be blooming. Will the desert out here in Palm Springs be blooming? It's just going to be remarkable to think. And we're going to have our new bodies. We're going to have a new mind and see Jesus. This is it just amazes me. Being able to go over to Israel during the Millennial Kingdom and just thinking, you know, I've had this conversation with Holler, and because he goes over there as often as he can too. And you look now at the processional road that takes you from the Pool of Siloam up to where the temple was, and now the Temple Mount. You go and you look at that and you go, man, it's like everything is being prepared for Jesus to come back. Even the opening of the processional road, to me, is so cool.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's going to be a restored earth, not a new earth. The new earth comes in the eternal
that
order.
comes later.
So because there's still people living on this current earth that will be destroyed, the sheep, Gentiles per se. So he's going to restore the earth so that they can inhabit the Messianic kingdom.
Can I ask you a couple questions that are coming
Sure.
in? This question comes from Liz Taylor. Do you refer to the Book of Enoch when trying to understand prophecy? Should we get a copy of the Book of Enoch for more understanding?
I think it's an extra biblical book, of course, but I think there are some important things that you can glean from it. It's quoted. I believe it's quoted from in Jude, is it not? It's quoted, I think, in the Bible from. And I know some people like Ken Johnson go to the Book of Enoch quite a bit to support some of the things he teaches. So I recommend it. I'm not an expert on the Book of Enoch, but I do think it's okay, as long as you realize it's an extra biblical book.
Yeah, it's like reading a commentary. In fact, there's some Bible translations that I have lots of different Bible translations. Some I use more as a commentary than literal, and it's understanding what those are. And the Book of Enoch is going to get some great historical perspective, but I think you just got to be careful on some of those things. And a lot more emphasis has been put on the Book of Enoch in prophecy circles than in other extra biblical books, I guess you could say. And people say, well, you have the, but why weren't the apocryphal books included? But that's a whole nother subject for another time. Jason Hernandez says, who will be guests at the wedding supper of the Lamb? Good question.
I believe that will be the resurrected Old Testament saints and the resurrected tribulation saints.
When do you think the wedding supper of the Lamb takes place?
I believe it happens in the 75-day interval.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up another question because I believe that, right? And here's the most interesting thing. In Revelation chapter 19, we have the wedding supper of the Lamb, and the Bible's very clear in 19 that we who have been raptured, we have our new bodies. We are the people that are in Revelation chapter 19, and we are there for the wedding supper of the Lamb. Now, this is interesting. And we're even told about our clothes that we are putting on for the wedding supper. It says, blessed are those who are called to the wedding supper, the supper of the Lamb. So look at it, it's so cool. And yet, I believe that the wedding supper also takes place during this interval. And the reason I believe it takes place in Revelation chapter 19, where we're in heaven, we're called to the wedding supper of the Lamb. We have our best clothes on. Our clothes are the righteous works of the saints, which, by the way, is a reminder to make sure you do good works in the name of the Lord, because you want to be dressed nice for that wedding supper. But when we are on the horses, Jesus is coming back. Just a couple of verses later is when Jesus returns to heaven. We're still dressed in our wedding clothes, coming out of heaven in our wedding clothes. Because it's very clear. It tells us how we're dressed while we are on our horses. So it appears we're dressed in our wedding clothes coming back to earth. Everything happens, and I think the wedding supper is going to take place here too.
Well, I think what we'll be involved with at the wedding supper is being the guest of honor as the bride, along with the groom. And if you look at the Jewish wedding model, one of the latter stages is the consummation period, where the bride and the groom consummate their wedding usually for 7 days, which would be a representation perhaps of the 7-year tribulation. Then we come out after the tribulation into the 75-day interval, having already consummated our wedding, our marriage, and now we're the guest of honor, and the resurrection of the Old Testament saints and tribulation saints happen, and they come to attend the wedding supper.
Yeah. I think it's exciting. I think you're right on the Old Testament saints, the ones who are resurrected from the tribulation period, us. I get asked that question a lot. What about the Old Testament saints? When are they resurrected? I agree with that. Not everybody does agree with us, but hey, that's fine with me. So let's see. I got another question on here. Where did it go? I lost it. John, here it is. Andra Salmon asks, and I've heard this many times before, this question. I know you've heard it many times before, but here it is. Age of accountability. Is there such a thing as an age of accountability?
Well, I've yet to find one in this present generation. There is one in the Millennium, in Isaiah 65, verse 20. So let's talk about that one first, maybe we'll get back to the answer about right now, is there an age of accountability? It says in Isaiah 65:20, no more shall an infant from there live but a few days, nor an old man who has fulfilled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed. So in other words, what that's saying to me is in the Millennial Kingdom, the sheep are going to populate, and they're going to have offspring, and each one of those children have to make a decision, and they have 100 years to make their decision, like we have to make our decision to accept Jesus Christ as a Savior. And he's co-reigning there. Right now he's in heaven, and we're receiving him through our faith in his invisible situation, right? Yeah. Although he's apparently making visitations in Iran. So Muslims are converting to Christ, the #1 country over there. But so anyway, there's an age of accountability. If a child doesn't make a choice by the age of 100, and if they died the next day, they would actually go to hell as well. So they have to make that decision. They should make that decision by 100 years. It doesn't mean they're going to die at 101, 102, but they have up to 100 years.
There's so much more to cover on the Millennial Kingdom. We just began to scratch the surface. We didn't get very far. With that, listen, I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and also for your support. It is really, it's just a real blessing to us to be able to move forward, and also for your encouragement with the video our premiere that we had just the other day with our video. How could this happen? And your encouraging words and your share of that. And also really appreciate if you like and share this with Bill Salus too. I will get Bill back as soon as possible. Next time, we will start off with the really good news. We'll just start right in the Millennial Kingdom, because we didn't get to anything we were planning on talking about. God bless you guys. Thank you, Bill. I had a conversation with my dad. He used to work for a company called Teledyne back in the early 1960s. And he was invited to a party in the Hollywood Hills. He said all the bigwigs were there, Henry Singleton and so forth. And he said an individual showed up and they're standing in the backyard looking into the city of Los Angeles. You see all these lights in the city out there and all the people that are out there. Someday, we're going to be able to control everyone. And he wasn't referring to just Los Angeles. Everybody is going to be identified. It's called the mark of the beast. Choosing the mark is really choosing to either live or die. There's no escape from the system.
Available in paperback and ebook. Get your copy today at markingthemasses.com.